Hello everybody, this is the Vikstrand. So, the story of Clockwise could not have been made today. It is absolutely impossible. The movie would have been over in like 5 minutes, tops 10, because it hinges so heavily upon the fact there is a lack of communication. If Facebook, if mobile phones and social media and stuff like that would have existed in Great Britain in 1986, this movie could not have been made at all. But that is actually one of the charming bits of this movie, which has actually made this movie more enjoyable to watch in 2021. And rather than when I watched it in like the mid-90s when I saw it the first time and thought that it was not very good. I actually think this movie is quite enjoyable. Let's find out why, shall we? This movie is called Clockwise. So John Cleese is the headmaster of a school. He's very punctual, and you know, if you're a minute late, he will beat your brains out with a baseball bat. Well, maybe he'll give you a tongue lashing, but apart from that, it is a bad thing to, you know, be late. He's very proud of the fact that he's running his school like clockwork, and he's even more proud of the fact that he's going to be invited to give a important speech. But miscommunication and misunderstandings makes him miss the train. And now we have to find another way of getting there. Laura, a former student, shows up, you know, in a car, and he commandeers it, and he is, you know, off to try to, you know, get to the speech on time. But life is going to put out a lot of hurdles and obstacles in front of John Cleese, and he has lots of people, you know, chasing after him because, you know, lots of misunderstandings happens. So this is basically our movie, a kind of a road movie and beating the clock challenge in a movie about somebody who's very punctual and, you know, having the worst day of his life. This movie relies very heavily upon that you like dry British comedy. This movie feels very British, very European. It was a pretty big hit in Europe at the time, but it played to absolute silence in small art house theaters in the United States. The sequence, which is very funny, of John Cleese trashing a phone booth, played to absolute silence in the United States and absolute howlings in Great Britain because they didn't understand the joke. And this is one of the key elements where I think why this movie is kind of forgotten today, because in parts I think this movie is really funny. The slapstick and the misunderstandings and stuff like that is in some cases absolutely hilarious. There are moments when this movie absolutely grinds to an absolute halt, and I will say that about 10-15 minutes before the finale, the script kind of runs out of steam and we limp our way towards the a bit lackluster finale, but it's fine anyway. I think this movie is really great. John Cleese is fantastic, even though he is not quite up there, you know, with A Fish Called Wanda levels or Basil Fawlty in Fawlty Towers, or God forbid, Monty Python. He's not quite as hilarious as he would have been as Basil Fawlty, but he's still really funny, and some of his lines are really great. Another problem this movie has is the fact that we don't have any memorable side characters. It's John Cleese and nobody else. In A Fish Called Wanda, we had 4 comedic geniuses. In here, we have 1 comedic genius, and you can only do that so far. It is a movie that is kind of stitched together, different, you know, sketches and stuff like that is kind of stitched together to make an almost coherent story. The movie lacks natural flow to it, unlike, you know, the river I'm standing by right now. If you like John Cleese's work, and if you like British comedies and haven't seen this movie yet, I think you could find lots of enjoyment in this one. If you're a little bit allergic to British, you know, more dry comedy, stay away from this movie and see other great Cleese movies like, you know, Life of Brian, or Monty Python and the Holy Grail, or A Fish Called Wanda, or even Fierce Creatures. Actually, that is a very underrated movie. Going back to what I said earlier, if this scenario would have happened in 2021, he would just tell his wife, come back, I missed the train, I have to take the car. This is more important than your chores, and I'll drop you by at, you know, the old folks home. and the movie would have been over, and he would have been there. It would have been, you know, snappy. But this movie, as I said, hinges so heavily upon the fact that the lack of communication is what creates comedy, and that is why I think this movie is kind of charming. I give this movie 66 points. Part of it is really, really, really funny. Part of it feels a little bit cold and distant and lacks something, but it is still a very entertaining movie with an okay pacing. But I would have liked to have some more interesting side characters, even though some of the scenarios is very memorable and some of the situations are very, very hilarious. So I'll see you next time from, well, so and so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.